Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Thanks for everybody being here. First order of business is there any questions or comments on the previous meeting minutes? Not, can we get a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Mark, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Any public comment? Okay. Megan's not feeling well today, so we'll skip that part and move into.
So as a reminder, feel free, you guys can come up. As a reminder, last month we heard from Visit Bend on their annual business plan and budget for the upcoming fiscal year 25-26. In the time, Visit Bend has made some adjustments and answered their questions, and this is kind of the final opportunity before this item goes to council in recommending this business plan and budget to be approved. So I will pass it over to Nate and Jeff.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us back. You all, in addition to our presentation last month, should have received our full larger business plan. And we really appreciate you taking the time to have looked it over. This is my first time running through this process with you all. So formally, we are open to, if a dialogue as need be, to answer any questions here today. I just wanted to reiterate that our organization's goal is to ultimately create positive economic impact, building resources for the city's general fund. And we're always navigating this balance of economic development, which is what VDEB is here to prioritize, with what our community balance of quality of life, which was what often sometimes is a priority of council. So the presentation and our plan hopefully reflects both of those things. And we are here today to receive hopefully your approval and answer any questions. So how best to do that? Would we turn it over to questions first, or should we go through any of the updated data that we brought back?
We can open it up if any board members have any questions that they'd like to address before seeing the final presentation. Now would be a good time to do so.
I don't have anything. Looks good.
I will say, hi, Nate Wyatt, Visit Bend. Thanks for having us back in front of y'all. I did have an opportunity to have coffee with Jen, and Jen, I think you're online. I think I saw you briefly, but really just appreciated the conversation, being able to dive in some of the data. And as you know, we sat up here and took up too much of your time last time, and I can really geek out on some of that stuff. So it was great just to have that conversation offline. If there are no outstanding questions, I can jump into a few of the slides related to some questions that we did receive following the presentation, if that works. So I'm not going to bore y'all with the same stuff that we walked through prior. Some new data that we did recently receive following our presentation came from Dean Runyon and Associates, and it ties into these high-level numbers which we presented at the beginning of May to show that travel spending was essentially flat year over year. However, where we did see some growth was in travel generated employment and travel generated earnings. And that's really great to see, particularly in an industry that's known for low paying jobs and slow career growth. So to see that means that not only are those employment opportunities supporting the tourism industry, but they're also supporting quality of life here in Bend, because we know that the same reason people choose to visit here are the same reason people choose to visit here. And because of that, more people are able to be employed in the services like dining out and a lot of these hospitality and recreation adjacent services and industries, which were highlighted in the target sector analysis as well. So what we saw in shopping and retail was a total visitor spend. This is just visitor spending again. So to set the table there, of the 386.3 million in visitor spending, which was recorded during calendar year 2024, it broke out to about 31.7 million being spent in shopping and retail. We know a lot of folks come here from places that have sales tax. So Oregon not having a sales tax is appealing to a lot of folks who are coming here and doing a little bit of shopping when they're visiting. Meals and food made up about almost $118 million, transportation and gas another 30 million. arts, entertainment, and recreation about 34.9 million, and then 31.7 million in lodging. So you can see that across the board, there was a significant amount of spending. What I think is interesting to point out here is that lodging, the mechanism by which the room tax is generated that supports primarily the city's general fund, was some of the on the lower end of overall spending. And our job, as you know, I even brought a copy of the city's contract, but it basically says these efforts seek to meet the needs of the local lodging industry and enhancing Bend's tourism industry while maximizing room tax revenue for the city of Bend. So that's the high level language in our contract with the city of Bend. So we exist to leverage that visitor economy to ensure that the room tax dollars going into the city's general fund are maximized as much as possible. This following slide, and Jeff, feel free to jump in too, was a conversation just around how we're communicating with folks in the industry. And I think it's important because for BDAB and for the public to know that we're not just up here making up ideas on a whim. We're engaging with industry suppliers, stakeholders, and folks, not only in the hospitality industry, but rec adjacent and some of those sort of tertiary businesses that touch the tourism industry, but also more have a local impact. And throughout that, you know, we do a lot to just communicate digitally. So we're sending out monthly email newsletters that not only give a quick cut, sort of high level snapshot of how the industry is performing, but we're also diving into other research projects that we might be invested in. We're letting folks know and expanding the messaging of city advisory boards and councils so that our lodging stakeholders can be aware of what's coming down the pipe, whether it's our transportation utility fee or the electrification policy or any of these hot button issues that folks get a little bit caught off guard about. Sometimes we're doing our best to communicate with them so that they know and that they have an opportunity to then, whether it's meeting with somebody like Cyrus or one of our counselors or somebody on one of these other advisory boards, we want to make sure that folks know that that opportunity to make those connections exists. Visit Bend does hold public board meetings every other month. So if you haven't been, you're more than welcome to come. They're really riveting, a lot of data, but a lot of you are like, no, I'm good. A lot of great conversations come out of that. And that's honestly one of the best ways that we are able to hear from our partners so that we can show up better. We participate in a number of forums, public engagements, things like that. So whether it's a city club related thing, which we provide data for so the city club can do a better job of telling the story, or if it's something that we're hosting in collaboration with OSU Cascades and their hospitality program to talk about workforce or to talk about opportunities on how sustainable tourism can be a viable sort of career objective for folks. We're engaged in a lot of those places. We're talking with a lot of our different stakeholders just throughout those processes in order to further engage and educate not only the public, but folks who work in the industry as well. And then I'm going to put Cyrus on the spot to talk a little bit about data sharing and insights. But as Invest Bend gets spun up and we look at this long-term first ever sort of city economic development strategy, City of Bend is going to be working closely with Visit Bend to identify spend data and leverage the data that we already invest in. It's also part of the scope of work in the contract that we have with the city as well. But really looking at where are people spending money, how much money are they spending, when are they spending it, where are they spending it, and what sort of KPIs can we develop to track that progression? Cyrus, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, so part of the new council goals for this biennium, one of the action items is to look at creating a Bend specific economic index. I think we're recognizing that accessibility to timely and relevant data is becoming harder and harder. And so we're trying to leverage what access our partners have to the tools and resources that they currently already deploy. Like, how do we align these things and really, I think, have some clear objectives of what we want to see improve over the course of the next biennium, and to the Invest Bend strategy even more long term. If we're looking 10 years, what are the metrics that we want to be including in that process to really track our progress and what we're doing from a policy standpoint. So I think that's that. And I just want to commend Visit Bend's efforts around community engagement. I think that has been an area that I've seen a lot of organizational improvement with, and you guys are showing up in the community and really involved and at the table for, I think, really important conversations, and I'm happy to have you there. So
yeah, Zavi holds us accountable. And then I added a couple of other charts, yay, more charts, that they really show, you know, we talked about how we're going to be strategically and almost surgically getting back into summer marketing, looking at midweek opportunities, looking at new demographics so as not to have an outsized negative impact on our community that's already seen explosive growth over the years. And these bar charts, the columns, 4 different colored columns, June, July, August, and September. And then the red dotted line shows that average summer hotel occupancy. And you can see over the years that we have slipped from about a high point of 86% occupancy to now being in the low to mid 70% occupancy ranges in the summertime. And so sometimes weekends are still busy. We don't anticipate needing to market on weekends. That's going to be very much, you're still going to see a lot of that responsible visitor messaging. Here's how to float the river responsibly. Here's what to do if wildfire breaks out. Here's how to carpool. Here's how to use public transportation. Here's how to do all of these things. But if there is a need, because again, it's our job to maximize those room tax revenues. If we see an opportunity, we have several campaigns ready to go at a moment's notice, ready to deploy and hopefully get some of those last minute visitors here in those slower need periods. This also aligns with some efforts when we're looking further down the road at how we mitigate potential long-term smoke impacts and wildfire impact within our community. We're aligning a lot of these data points and able to develop campaign assets that can be deployed for those efforts as well. And then this is just a fun heat chart, something that I did kind of last minute, but I thought it was interesting. So what you're looking at is going across, you're looking at every month, and then up and down are the years. The lighter colors represent lower room tax collection months. The darker colors represent higher room tax collection months to the tune of between 1.8 and even above $2 million on a monthly basis. So what you're seeing here is that over the course of time, it's been our goal to sort of stabilize that curve that happens in our tourism industry from a lodging tax perspective. And 2018, there was not a single month where lodging tax collections exceeded $1.6 million. You come down into coming out of the pandemic, and there were several months where lodging tax collections just in one single month exceeded $2.4 million. So we're in this really great spot. We've experienced, just like a lot of businesses have, sort of a right sizing coming out of the pandemic. But overall, things are looking really good, and we're seeing that narrowing of lower collection months happen coming out of that pandemic, which is really great to see. So lodging tax collections continuing to increase despite a slip in hotel occupancy, but we're finding advantageous opportunities to get those occupancy levels up. We can hopefully then double down on that higher average daily rate that those hotels are charging to maximize those returns to the city's general fund. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to sort of talk about some long-term looking ahead type things, just when we talk about, you know, how we're making sure that not only we're aligning with the Invest Ben project to ensure that as tourism, hospitality, and recreation have been adopted as a target sector, we want to make sure that we're listening to the folks who are working in that industry to help carry their voice forward, but also ensuring that we're doing our part to show up and ensure that tourism and hospitality is an appropriately sized focus of this effort so that we can make sure that that industry feels supported as we grow and move forward from an economic standpoint.
Thanks, Nate. Some just tactical stuff we didn't get into last time. It was sort of high level. We've identified group business as a very strong opportunity sector for us to focus on. Group travel tends to have a smaller footprint on destinations. Their focus are more resilient should things like fire or weather come up, less likely to cancel plans, etc. So we have set aside significant resources this year to both partner on a regional level with Visit Central Oregon for a larger collaborative strategic effort. We have staff plan to come on to support those efforts internally and coordinate with our local hotels and centers. And then we're looking at the future at what instead, you know, what can we do to generate more revenue? What's the opportunity? What's our competitive set as far as communities? And we'll be doing a feasibility study on conference and convention space, just timing wise with the city's plans to move buildings and potential need for more resources, and with our local partners with the airport and the fairgrounds also looking at future planning and expansion. We feel like it's a really good time to invest in information to drive future investment decisions and also support current targeting of group business that we might not be able to be that we don't have currently. So we'll be doing a lot in that realm this year. Of course, you've heard about the wildfire messaging and resiliency that's ever growing and changing, and we will continue to be partnering with that. The city's economic development plan investment, I think, is the most important part of all of our future here, in my opinion. We're really excited. We've committed staff time to be and data to be part of that. And we see that as a really huge opportunity and are excited to help bring some of that group business data to the table. Is that a strategy we feel like is potentially good for the community that could be a generator? Can we align other projects with that may, arts and culture and, sports, and how does this all fit together for a healthy future, both for visitors and locals? And then we're looking at expanded revenue opportunities. So to support real community needs, we all know housing and transportation are huge. We also know that we're limited with how the tax laws say that we can spend our resources. There are people that want to overturn the laws or change it so we'd like to make more, build a bigger engine than just talk about taking more of the resources from the engine we have. So we are looking at things like tourism improvement district overlays and having conversations with different mechanisms that might be able to contribute impacts. As far as our partners, more surveys with the community, working closely with the chamber and our other economic development partners to really make sure we do have a pulse on what businesses are feeling or needing. We feel we're doing a really good job, but we could always do better. And then our grant programs, how do we continue to grow those and make them more equitable, more focused as possible in Bend, to have the most impact on our economy and our community? So what's next? Our
Yeah,
budget.
that's it. Yeah, and y'all already saw that, so I don't want to bore you with the same slides that you saw before I do. There's one thing that's not called out in the fiscal year 26 priorities and goals here on this slide deck that does live in the fuller business plan, if y'all got a time for you to see that. And that's really just that high level goal to align with the Invest Bend project to ensure that, as like I said, tourism and recreation have been adopted as that target sector, that we're ensuring we're playing our part to not only support from a data standpoint, but to represent that industry when we're talking about that industry at the table.
We would entertain questions if you have them.
Jen, do you have anything that you want to chime in with?
Guys, I appreciated the updates very much. I like your I like that last slide about looking forward. I have two questions. First of all, like how often, I mean, again, I've only been on this commission now for the last like 7 months. So I'm not sure how often we should expect to hear from you on things like that. But what's sort of your cadence about those future looking projects and according to your contract, like how often do you come back and sort of, to report back to us? And then my second question is about that 3 years of flat lodging tax revenue and I'd like to see it maybe a little bit more explicitly, like what your plans are for that. Like, should we just expect that that's the number and that's where we're going to hang and this is our budget, or is the growth, should a growth be implied by the fact that you're electing to re-engage in summer marketing, or should growth be implied by the fact that you're considering things like a tourism overlay district? Like, just say a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are, yes, all of our efforts are intended to try to move growth, and we measure ourselves as such, given the all of the different factors that may impact or not. I think I would expect to see movement in a positive nature from the summer alone, the strategy around summer, and with the specific group tactics. I think that we will most certainly see growth in group business. Now, we can't control, I mean, there are outside forces that we are constantly working with, but our strategy right now is to try to diversify into tactics that we haven't been currently deploying. And we know that, I can say that we have an extremely strong team when tasked with delivering messages and getting people to make choices and decisions. We can get them to do that. I mean, I think that that's representative in us choosing not to market for the last several years, based on the city's really kind of following council's sentiment. And to that end, we have not. So we did then pursue data to support. Is this really something we should continue to do, or is there a way that we should be looking at targeted growth? And we've chosen to turn that back on. So I don't know, I'm getting a little off topic, but how would you answer that, Nate? Yes, we should expect growth.
Yeah,
We're
those
gonna do
are.
everything we can to make growth happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was something that was a little bit buried in that larger PDF, but those two tactics that Jeff mentioned are really where our focus is to grow lodging tax, particularly the next couple of years, especially in the face of potential economic uncertainty with what's going on. I mean, like you can't listen to the radio or turn on the news without seeing like stock market's off X% or up X%. And so with that economic uncertainty, we feel like the new things, a return to strategic summer marketing efforts, and then the group business piece, which not only drives more consistent revenue, but also helps to compress the demand and expand that to other lodging partners, which really helps to generate even more lodging tax revenue. So we're looking at those two efforts specifically to grow lodging tax growth. In terms of how often we are expected to be in front of BDAB, that's generally twice a year. So it's a mid-year update as well as in May, and then the May one with an asterisk because we normally come back again as we are now. Just know that y'all have had a lot asked of you with a lot of ad hoc meetings the last few months, and so trying to be respectful with all of that. But our contract does require that we are in front of BDAB twice a month for a mid-year update, and then this time of the year to get your approval to go in front of council from that. And in terms of how often we're looking at long-term planning, this current opportunity that we're amongst with all of us as we step into these invest bend waters is a little bit different because we want to ensure that our efforts are in line with those invest bend efforts. That said, we're constantly reviewing and looking at what's next for us and what we need to get there and sort of what that timeline looks like. We have a 5-year contract with the city. We're currently in year 3, getting ready to go into year 4 with that contract. And as we get into fiscal year 27 and looking at that, there's a larger opportunity to look forward and understand how we can meet the needs of our growing city while also balancing that with the needs of our industry that we represent.
If you're ever wanting to go, let me just say this, it's so, there is so much, I love the idea, your question about tactics, because and should we expect growth? We'd be happy to welcome you to the office. We'd come back and talk about it anytime. We're sitting here, I mean, this nonstop talking about tactics based on data. So I would love to extend an invitation to come to our boardroom anytime and sit down and go through that in detail. And we'd be happy to bring back anything that you could ever want to hear.
Yeah,
Guys, you guys were really careful. You're
Yeah.
really careful to talk about the well, people start getting angry once we get to 75%. And all of us saw your, robust communications around Memorial Day weekend, and what locals should expect vis-a-vis, visitors and traffic. And that's all great. And it's excellent community stewardship. And also, so many businesses really rely on a robust visitor economy, and I know you are attempting to balance that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, it is. So, Jeff had a meeting with a counselor last week, and just that juxtaposition sitting in here in front of y'all, and your job is to ensure that economic activity is thriving and that we're moving things forward and that there's growth. And then you have a council who's saying, okay, I know this is your job, but
Yeah.
so it's delicate, but I really appreciate champions like you, Jen, and just saying like, hey, what can we do to ensure that you guys can support these small businesses? Because I agree, it is really important. And if we don't have a thriving community and a thriving visitor economy, then we don't have a thriving economy that supports locals as well.
I think more anecdotally with the shift of summer marketing, like what would you say will be the experience of people that live, like what will be the difference that you think people will feel on a day-to-day kind of basis?
Hopefully it'll be minimal. That's the idea. We're using that data to look at when, looking at pacing, forward-looking data as well as historical data to understand those times when occupancy has been low. Why is occupancy low? And only from there do we push the button to turn on very strategic campaigns, and we can pull different levers. So, do we want to go big to the entire Portland DMA, or do we just want to target these zip codes with these income demographics and these psychographic makeups? And so we can be very strategic and, like I said, almost surgical in how we do that to attract folks with hopefully not overrunning and not changing that experience, right? I think the experience, as you all know, while occupancy over those last 8 years in the summer months is down about 14.5%, we've also grown as a community, and we've added
26%.
Yeah. And so we've added a lot of new residents. So everybody's feeling the squeeze, and it's our intention as we reintroduce summer marketing not to increase that squeeze that folks are feeling, but hopefully the businesses do see the positive, and as well as our city's general fund do see the positive impacts of that.
Thought that might be the case. I appreciate that intentionality, so thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns?
Yes, I can hear you, sorry.
Just a quick question. So last time we talked about the opportunities for emerging different marketing tactics and different demographic and the incremental return associated with that. And so looking at your budget, saying that, there's been some cuts maybe or in terms of marketing. But are there specific action items that are within or supporting your strategic pillars around diversity and going after those sort of non-traditional demographics?
There are, yeah, and we can, I can make room for Zabi up here too, because Zabi's been hard at work on our strategic partnership program. And the idea with that is that it's very, yeah, exactly. I was gonna give
So
a heads up,
before we
but-
jump in real quick though, so we've had cuts in marketing, but those cuts were really, we were contracting work out, and we've basically pulled those folks in internally to help. So if we're contracting out PR and we're contracting out storytelling, we've said, you know what, we're gonna hire a person that lives in the community that has the experience, and they're gonna work with us on this. So effort wise and the resources that we're putting out there aren't smaller. Hopefully they're even more
That's good. That's great.
so just to make sure you know that we're not
Yeah, we're not actually
dialing
cutting our marketing
back our
spend.
marketing spend. You'll see our personnel spend go up because we're just internalizing that. But
Yeah, from the just from the strategic partnership and some of that diversity, equity, inclusion type work that we're talking about. We have the strategic partnership program, and if you'd seen any of our prior business plans, they were more focused on sort of environmental sustainability. Not that we're moving away from that, but we're looking at how we can invest in these community strategic partners in a way that not only meets those needs, but also helps to meet that ultimate goal of helping to increase those room tax collections to the city of Bend. So I'll turn it over to Zabi because he's been working on this framework that's not quite complete. Will be by the time we enter our fiscal year, but.
Yeah, I think to that point, and tactically working with specific groups, not only locally, but outside of the area that have that connection to those communities. And someone that it sounds like, Dwayne and Rashad and Camp Yoshi. So they do what they call trips to nowhere. So 2 to 3 days. So it kind of aligns with also our group sales efforts as well. But they work specifically with communities of colors from different markets. So the Portland area, New York, Dallas, and other areas. So again, and in that strategic partner plan, trying to see like what's also reasonable and also what makes sense in moving the needle and what that looks like. And so right now working with him to finalize that strategic partnership and hoping to get, once a month was pretty aggressive, but if we can get once a month, then he seems that that's pretty feasible. So again, 2 to 3 days in Bend, working with those groups to about 15 to 20 folks coming into town. And then also working on that strategic partnership with local organizations like Vamonos Outside that do that local work here already with that nexus of like kind of experience and what does that mean and look like. And also connecting them with other resources that are already here in town to help with that, with organizations like the Fathers Group, LCA. Those are more service-based, but again, more so curating experiences with these communities and specifically communities of color in the area.
And so, couple questions. So how is that tying back to the small business owners here that are minority owned? But so are you working with them? So I guess
Yeah, I guess what's support specifically for the businesses of color? Yeah.
So how are we communicating that externally to those communities? Are we going by influencers like Camp Yoshi, or are we doing something on the website as well so that people organically find that if they're searching?
Yes, in combination.
Yeah, all of the above,
Yes.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, we intend to leave no stone unturned, and I think even a good example of that is how we've worked with Oregon Adaptive Sports over the past year as a strategic partner as well. You know, almost 50% of their participants are visitors, and so we work with them to ensure that that they are able to sort of plug into the visitor economy and to those small businesses, and those folks understand that the folks who are already members or take advantage of OAS activities while they're here know that this organization exists and that we're helping to amplify their storytelling as well so that they can do more as an organization to support their members and folks who use their services. So that success that we've learned a lot from, we hope to apply through this lens as well.
Gotcha.
And they can parallel with those businesses, with all businesses, again, like being thoughtful and like, okay, we have this group coming, group of 20 folks, how can we get them plugged into those businesses, work with those businesses, like what makes sense for you for this time frame, if not this time, maybe the next month or whatever that looks like to activate, and ensure that they're getting plugged in.
Got it.
What
So-
helps, oh, sorry, another thing that we do is hold space and convene conversations with these different groups, whether it's a group of local business owners or the Forest Service, or, you know, it's great if we can help support and convene the conversations and what's needed and have this sharing. Because there are, you know, whether it's our Indian populations, you know, our you know, our local businesses, for there's a lot of need and messages that we're trying to balance, and we are happy to be there and help convene and then identify how we can support. So if there are Black and Brown Business Association or the Downtown Association or something like that, where we can help support or get it off the ground, or at least convene regular conversations, we are there with any human capacity to do so.
Yeah, I just think to put in small businesses and working together, I'm sorry for jumping ahead with that question about the small business, because I do think that being able to tie Visit Ben's website to some of those small Black and brown businesses that are restaurants, that are holding events, and, you know, holiday celebrations and so forth.
Yeah.
Would be something to also to attract. And one of the, you know, Portland is known for is being kind of a foodie environment, but they had to work at developing their reputation over time, and it was an intentional effort to kind of do that. And I think Visit Ben obviously can help promote those communities, small businesses that are here as you're going through your normal kind of outreaches.
Yeah, the other
That's
thing,
actually a tactic we're
yeah,
we're actually doing right now, focused around food and stories in that way as well.
yeah, this didn't make it into our business plan because it happened just a couple weeks ago, but I don't know if you saw, we announced our most recent round of Ben Cultural Tourism grant funding, and there are a lot of efforts, or a lot of events and cultural happenings focused there in the DEI space as well. And that's another way that we're not only supporting those, but what's great about those is that we're giving folks the resources to do so. We know because of the law by which we are funded and how we have to operate that it has a tourism impact to it, but we also know that it really supports our community as well. So
And I think this is getting in the weeds a little bit too. I'm happy to talk to anybody on the dais, anybody online. Didn't say it for the record, but Xavier Borja, so the Destination Stewardship Director, so overseeing all of our reinvestment and grant programs, so overseeing the Event Cultural Tourism Fund, Event Sustainability Fund, strategic partnerships, and then our events and sponsorship kind of reinvestment tools. And as a part of that, wanting to be proactive, and so stepped in January, kind of midstream of both the grant programs. And so moving forward after our fiscal year, being really intentional with that community outreach and community engagement of letting folks know that we have these tools available and helping them get connected to the right areas and what that means and what that looks like, to continue to move the needle on that way. So we have all these different tactics in place. And again, happy to get in the weeds of the strategic partnerships, kind of who we have lined up coming up for the fiscal year 26, but also just in general with Event Sustainability Fund or Event Culture Tourism Fund as folks need or want.
And I just a historical perspective, just for maybe folks that don't know about our work or our funding, is that the law says that we can have to use our resources to market to visitors, right? And visitor is someone that's 50 miles or more. So we've figured out, you know, telling our story, letting people locally know about our work has been a real tricky legal loophole. So us hiring human capacity to be able to help with that and get and convene and have conversations and find creative ways to do that is a priority for us. So we know that we're behind. You know, you'll see more and more and more of that since me taking the helm a year ago. We really are invested in making sure that we are finding creative ways to connect the community within the law.
I mean, you know, really the next time we see you guys, it'd be great to have like a update.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Taking enough time.
Yes, I'm gonna boot you from sharing so I can share. And someone would do the honors.
Move to approve the Visit Bend business plan and budget for fiscal year 2025 through 2026 as presented to BDAP on June 2nd, 2025.
And I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We look forward to being back, bringing our updates.
Next, we have Heather Fitt, who is the executive director of East Cascades Works. Everyone, I'm sure, is already familiar that East Cascades Works has the ex officio seat on VDAB. Chad Young is a board member that regularly attends our VDAB meetings, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to have Heather come talk about the organization, all the programs and services that they offer, and how we can hopefully look at strengthening our relationship moving forward. So thank you, Heather, for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Cyrus. I really appreciated the invite. So I've prepared a little PowerPoint for your entertainment today.
I have it on my computer, but it's not showing up here.
I don't want to have to do interpretive dance again, Cyrus. You have to find it.
Probably be more entertaining, I'll say that.
Hey, I have a killer PowerPoint. Just kidding.
For dance moves, I'm sure more.
Oh,
Here we go.
yeah. It's very Elaine Bennis. Okay. Yeah, okay, so I made a joke once about a Seinfeld episode to my county commissioners, and none of them knew what I was talking about. It's like, these peanuts are making me thirsty. Anyway, I was like, I don't know how to relate. You've never heard of Seinfeld? Okay. Can you go to the first slide just to start us off? So East Cascades Works is appointed by the governor to serve the 10 counties east of the Cascades. And really our role is we are a backbone organization. We do not deliver direct service, and that's on purpose. There's an executive order from the governor that says that we need to be investors and neutral evaluators of the public workforce system. And in Oregon, that's branded as WorkSource. Okay, next slide. So that hideous colored thing in the middle there, that's my area. So if you haven't heard of us or you haven't seen me around, it's because we have 30,000 square miles that we cover. And although Bend Redmond MSA is our largest area, it's where about 60% of our resource stays here in Central Oregon, and we're headquartered here, we actually serve the 10 counties east of the Cascades. And what I want to mention in this as well is that, can you go back? What I want to mention in this as well is we are predominantly federally funded. When I started almost 10 years ago, 9.5 years ago, we were only receiving federal funds. So the work through the US Department of Labor, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding, that was nearly 100% of our resource. In the coming fiscal year, it will be 63% of our resource. So we had about $2.8 million when I started, and we hustle and we bring a lot of resource into this community. So our budget is closer to 9 million now, and that is based on really deep partnerships and really, frankly, hustling for resource. Next slide. So really our programs and initiatives really have a dual customer base. Young people or the talent pipeline, adult career changers, human beings, just people. That's what the workforce is, right? It's just people. And business. So on the youth side, we really have several product lines. One is Youth Career Connect, which is a partnership right now with Bend Lapine School District. And it's focused on internships, but we've also added a component, or will be adding it in the coming year, paid internships are very expensive and they serve very few people, but career exposure or helping young people see opportunities for themselves in the community is something that we really need to get young people out of the school building to do. And so we are co-developing career passports for key industries, healthcare, construction, leisure hospitality. We're working with Zavi on that one. And that one is a great opportunity because you can talk till you're blue in the face to a young person about soft skills or customer service skills, but the best job training program is a job. So hospitality tourism is one of the best industries for really teaching those soft skills, teamwork, looking people in the eye, showing up on time, hygiene, things like that. And then the Youth Compass program. Yeah, I've had many of those conversations. Yes. Oh, that's really a fun one to have with someone with your office door closed. Let's talk about your hygiene. So Youth Compass program is our WIOA funded program, and that is really focused on young people who have dropped out or fallen out of mainstream high school. So 16 to 24-year-olds who are either don't have their secondary credential or do, but they're like hanging out on the sofa playing video games and they need their next step. And so we wrap around them and support them to success. And then adults, really, it's our work source centers. So the work source center used to be by Lava Lanes, and now it's closer to the original Pancake House over off of MK there. Not MK, that's the other side of town, Century. And then we also in our region cited the first job training centers inside the 2 prisons in our area. So we have a prison at Deer Ridge in Madras and also Warner Creek in Lakeview. And based on data and research, really, the end of the day, one of the factors that is the key factor in reducing recidivism, rapid attachment to meaningful employment. So we can make our community safer, address a talent pipeline need, and really support the families of people who've been impacted by the criminal justice system. And it was such a huge success that I was able to convince my peers from around the state to join in, because many of the folks that are incarcerated here get released to the Valley. So it's kind of a bridge to nowhere. We're supporting them and the COCC is doing welding training, and then there's nowhere to hand them off. So this is now a statewide program that we're pretty proud of. On the business side, in partnership with EDCO and Central Oregon Community College, John and Lori and I met, I don't know, I want to say 1.5 years ago, and talked about, we all serve industry, but we're not coordinated in talking enough. So we really developed something called the Business Response Network, and it's where the folks, and Cyrus comes to those meetings. So we meet monthly and really share reconnaissance on the backside so that when we show up to business, we're more buttoned up and put together. And so we now know enough services that each other are providing that we can kind of make good referrals. And so we're still working through that partnership, but it's so far so good. The chambers there, industry associations are there, like anybody who's business facing, all of our work source partners. One of the exciting things that's come out, one of my favorite things about Central Oregon is how partnerific we are and how easy it is to partner here. And right now we're working with EDCO and COCC and now OSU Cascades really to address the bioscience industry's need for talent as they expand. So we're pretty excited about that deep partnership as well. Sector partnerships are really focused right now on healthcare and construction. So we convene construction employers separate from healthcare employers, they have different needs, and really let them lead on what their industry needs to ensure that there's a talent pipeline. We've historically had employee advancement grants. So when I started 10 years ago, my first conversation with Roger Lee from EDCO was, we need incumbent worker training funds. That's something we used to have and we don't have it anymore. So we implemented it again. But I'm going to talk in a minute about how we don't have the money for that anymore. and that the city may be able to play a role. And then WorkSource really offers multiple things. There's recruitment and screening of candidates. There's layoff aversion. So if a company is at risk of laying off or has laid off, we can step in and we can support those impacted workers before or after a layoff. And then on-the-job training funds are really to acknowledge the work. If you are going to hire somebody and they're a good fit, but they don't have all the skills they need, we would pay half their wages while they're in training so that you're being compensated for that lost productivity and that lost time because they're just training on the job. Next slide. So these are really the folks that we're helping. So right now, we are really challenged for money. In this coming fiscal year, we are down $1 million. And we are taking yet another 10% reduction from the feds. So WIOA is the primary federal funding for workforce development in our country. And Oregon has seen a 50% decrease in that funding in the last dozen years. So we used to get 60 million and now we're down to 30. Well, the prosperity program funding under the Future Ready initiative is also expiring. And we came out, we did such a great job with these funds that we're actually over 100% of our enrollment goal. And we're not even done with the performance period, but that means we don't have money, right? So we paid Portland State University to conduct a study of the prosperity program investment statewide. And we have some pretty incredible results. So 35 million of the 200 million that Governor Brown put into Future Ready, 16% went into this program, and it went to local workforce boards. Next slide. And what we found is we were charged with really enrolling 10,000 people. We already exceeded our numbers. The goal for getting folks reemployed was 75%. We met that goal. 50% had to be women. We actually met that goal in our area, but statewide, we were just under at 46%. And that the goal was that the wage was at least 17 an hour, which is kind of silly because that's minimum wage now. But the goal was 75% and we actually hit 85%. And actually, the average wage is $22 an hour. So we did pretty darn well on that one. Next slide. So I think this is the headline for me and should be for every tax-paying person in our state, which is all of us. This $35 million investment generated $23.1 million in new tax revenue and $195.4 million in reduced social services costs. There is not another investment that I've ever seen in this state that brings in that kind of a return on investment. The fact that this state makes very little investment in workforce development, yet 82% of the general fund in this state is our personal income tax, is completely illogical to me and just frankly pisses me off. So we're hoping to have continued support and see this investment happen. Even if it's not at the 35 million, the state really needs to step up and make some investments. As businesses are closing, as people are impacted, ours is the system that serves dislocated workers. We are the folks that are going to catch the unemployed and rapidly reemploy them. Next slide. Okay, so a little birdie told me that the BDAB may be coming into some resource, and I wanted to just plant a seed that there's one of the things that we're allowed to do with our federal funds, but we currently don't have enough resource to do, is fund incumbent worker training. So great, you've got your talent, you hired them, they're on board. but they need some retraining in a new software system, in a point of sale system, and we need to now go online with this. For example, we funded, in the Gorge, there was a Boeing supply chain manufacturer who was going to be kicked out of the Boeing supply chain if they didn't get ISO certified. ISO certification isn't just a class. You have to pay a consultant to come in and they have to help you design a manufacturing process that has checks and balances throughout it. And so it's a 50% matching grant. So they paid half, we paid half, and they were able to stay in the Boeing supply chain. And so we were able to help a business stay in business and become compliant and maintain their employees. So another example is there's a Tofurky video. I won't play it for you now, but I'd love you to watch it. It's really great. They have a very diverse workforce, majority Spanish speaking. And so they hired someone to really help them create some language overlap programs. And so this video is kind of how they did it and what the impact was. So the focus of those funds really are about equipping individuals with additional credentials that really make them even more employable. I like to call it recession proofing people. So the more you can kind of cross train people. But that is just something that I was thinking about, is very economic development focused and could be something, if the city of Bend were, or if the BDAB were interested, that's a role that we could play.
And just to clarify, so the board is familiar with what we're discussing, or it's not necessarily a grant, but more of how the city is contracting for economic development services with our partners is something that is transitioning from a sole source agreement to more of a standardized RFP. And I think workforce development is certainly an area that council has indicated they would like to support financially. So I think that was my ask of Heather, was to say, tell BDAB what that might look like.
And it could be anything. The city is also investing in 20 internships this summer, or 10 internships, I'm sorry. With Youth Career Connect. But I didn't think that was as squarely economic development focused. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or
Yeah, thanks so much, Heather. Does anyone? Yeah, please.
So the Ben is an exceptional environment in that it has a lot of small businesses, right, per capita. Right?
Yep.
And so has the program thought about doing sort of, I'm sure you have creative development, but this looked like it was kind of industry based. Is there anything around entrepreneurship that you guys are looking at?
you know, that's really interesting because that's one of the things that we're thinking of adding into kind of the construction area as well as hospitality tourism. Those are kind of some areas. I would say that generally speaking, we're about the workforce as opposed to about the entrepreneur. But we partner closely with SBDC and others.
Development as well. I mean,
It really is. And you could pick any topic on the planet and I could make a dotted line to workforce development. So.
Any other questions?
I think it's great. Awesome.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks. And if anybody has questions, you can ask Gary North. He's my former chair.
Great. Well, the next item is just more logistical. You guys probably noticed by now, we had 2 BDAB members resign recently. That was Ryan Andrews with Hiatus Homes and Petra Blonza. Both of them just felt like they couldn't necessarily dedicate the amount of work that they wanted to this commitment of theirs. So they wanted to provide that opportunity for someone else that might have a little more bandwidth to contribute. So this morning, a press release went out for those 2 vacancies, and that recruitment will be open until June 30th. So we'll be looking for 2 additional members So please share those in your networks. Feel free to point anyone my direction if they'd just like to have coffee or have a quick phone call to learn more about what the board is and what it does and what the commitment kind of looks like. Obviously, you guys are familiar and can play that role as well. But just wanted to make sure folks are aware that those openings are currently being recruited for. So there's that. There's also another thing happening on June 30th, and that is the start of Katie serving as our first economic development officer. So we're extremely excited to welcome Katie onto the good side. Chamber City pipeline is strong, it seems, so we're extremely excited to have Katie be on board and not be a team of one anymore, which will be a nice welcome change as well. So June 30th will be Katie's first date with us at the city, which, yeah, we're all really extremely excited and encouraged about. And I think just the love and executive open like the excited the approach economic development move forward. So those are the two updates on that. Katie, do you have anything you'd like to share with the group?
I'm just, yeah. I'm anxious to get started. It's gonna be great. Yeah, I'm really pleased with how the direction the city has gone. I think it's been a work on a lot of people's parts over the last year or so in aligning this up, and so good times. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, and I think the chamber is in such a great position, and I think we'll continue to be a really relied upon partner for BDAB and for the city in terms of how we interact and communicate with the business community. So thank you for all that you guys have done and continue to do. And those are the updates that I've had.
Do we have a focused outreach for those two extra BDAP positions in terms of sectors or?
Yeah, it's a little unique because we can't necessarily,
Okay.
The city can't necessarily seek out specific folks for those vacancies, but you're more than welcome, I think, as BDAB members to reach out and see if they're interested. I think more anecdotally, looking at how your role at RNH has obviously changed, and Ryan being in the development community also, I think there could be opportunity there. I think bioscience, having Lonza be represented was good. I don't know if there are any folks in there that would make sense, but it's kind of mine. Shared those vacancies with a lot of our ECDev partners, so trying to get the word out as broadly as we can.
Yeah, maybe looking on board. What, 6 months?
They would be appointed in July, and their first meeting would be in August. And by code, we have to have 9 members, so it's not an option to leave those seats vacant.
Cyrus, what was the cutoff date for applications again?
June 30th. It's an easy day for you to remember.
Yeah, I think, there's, the board engagement has increased over the past 12 months, and it's been tremendous help to have that. So, hopefully, I think that's the most important part of the search, in my opinion, is just the engagement factor, and obviously, good community members and everything else too, but just getting people on that are willing to put the time in and engage in the conversations is hugely important. Will be even more so with economic development that's happening. Over the next year, that it's going to be a lot happening. So
I agree, and I feel really encouraged about the level of interest that we've had in these openings over the course of the last several months. So I think that we should have a really strong applicant pool that will be comprised of people that are wanting to give this the time that it needs and deserves. So just a reminder, all of those positions are appointed by the mayor.
Yep.
So just want to make sure folks are aware it's not something that like BDAB ultimately gets to decide or anything like that. And that is consistent with all of the city's advisory bodies. So it's just, I think, something to be aware of.
okay.
We have Mayor Pro Tem Perkins on. I know, don't feel pressured to say anything. I think we're close to wrapping up.
No, it's okay. Sorry. I'm in rough shape today. I apologize for not being there. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to give you a little bit of update and then leave some room for questions about anything that council has been doing or are about to do. We were in the heart of budget deliberations, which led to at our last meeting a conversation about maybe we need to prioritize a few things over others because we had a little bit too much in our goals that we might need to. So we had to pick things that we wanted to either delay or just try and roll over into the next goal session. But I don't believe, and Cyrus, correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't really anything in economic development that was really substantive that we decided to delay. All the really key stuff in that goal area we did keep around. We also had a really interesting conversation about putting together a housing work group to identify what subsidies and incentives that we can put into place so that we can get those 33,000 units on the ground over the next 20 years. And so that will be starting in the fall. And we had a public hearing for the first three site-specific TIF projects, which was really great. And I'm trying to think. I think that was the main crux of the last meeting. This next one, we're going to be doing a big transit update, which I'm really looking forward to because I know that on council we have a big interest in increasing our transit options. We're going to be doing a quick fee schedule resolution and a public hearing on for our development code to sort of help facilitate some more housing options with for second ADUs and basically a second kitchen and row houses and things like that. And we're also going to be doing a resolution about our city fleet and an electric first policy with the caveat that the heavier vehicles and the emergency vehicles are not a part of that. Also, just for if you did not know, the point in time count results came out just a little bit ago, and the city of Bend itself really remained flat over a 2-year period, which is really positive news, especially as our homeless numbers in the city of Bend are counting Juniper Ridge and China Hat. The region itself did go up, but that was largely the result of doing a lot better data process. And so feeling pretty good about what we've managed to do in the city of Bend and how we've managed to stabilize. The small percentage that it did go up in the city of Bend was mostly in the sheltered category. So we're not raising our unsheltered number, which is also really important. And then finally, we had the Bend Business Roundtable meeting. I think that was last week. And Don Mile and I are working on a little project to do some monthly tours for counselors to get into some businesses around Bend so they can hear directly from the businesses. So we're going to be working on that project when he returns from Spain. I think that's where he is, Spain. But happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Anyone have any questions or concerns? This Wednesday, obviously, we'll be hearing from Visit Bend also to get their
Yes.
business plan approved. And
Yes.
there'll also be a preview of the second round of the TIF applications and receive.
Yes.
So there'll be 3 more that will be up before Borough to see if they want to move forward in the process. Awesome. Great. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks.
Hope you feel better soon. And that is our last formal item. Is there anything for the good of the order before we adjourn?
On table items, anybody online?
Good. Okay.
When we hear about the schedule? AD plan.
We'll have a big update at the July meeting. Right now, Jonathan and I are wrapping up a lot of the data analyses, and we're doing a state of the housing, which is used for more than just this process. That's more for how like the work group that Megan said, and an annual thing that the city's starting to spur up. We're finally getting some information from the state on employment numbers with the census data. So in July, we'll have that'll probably be the one action item that we have. I don't think we have anything else on the agenda.
Great.
Awesome.
Nothing else, we'll give you some time back today.
We have a ribbon cutting on Friday
We're gonna be cutting on Friday.
for Gary's new venture.
Transportation solution, you're down.
Yeah.